Your computer is lying to you, not in a dramatic science fiction kind of way, but in a quiet, everyday way that costs you time, money, and privacy every single time you turn it on. And the frustrating part? There's been a better option, sitting right there for decades, one that most people have never seriously considered because the story they've been told about it is wrong. Today, that story ends, because I'm not going to ask you to trust me. I'm going to show you the numbers, I'm going to walk you through the measurements, and by the time we're done, you'll understand something that mainstream technology conversation has been burying under decades of commercial noise. Linux is not the nerdy alternative, it's the superior platform across every domain that matters to your real computing life. And the proof is specific, measurable, and independently verifiable. Let's start with something that happens every single day, multiple times, for most people on the planet. You press the power button, you wait. You stare at a logo, you wait some more. On Windows 11, running on modern hardware, the average boot time from pressing that button to reaching a usable desktop is 47 seconds. On Ubuntu 24.04 LTS, one of the most popular Linux distributions, running on the exact same hardware, that number is 11 seconds. That is a 4.3 times difference. Not a small margin, not a rounding error. 4.3 times faster on identical hardware. So where does that extra 36 seconds go on Windows? It goes into loading a commercial infrastructure that runs alongside your operating system. Background services for telemetry, Copilot integration, advertising systems, update, preparation processes. All of it initializing before you've opened a single app. Windows isn't just booting your computer, it's booting its business model onto your computer, and you're sitting there watching the loading screen while it does. This isn't just about boot time either. Once the system is up, the performance gap doesn't close, it persists. When you measure application launch times on that same matched hardware, the pattern holds. Firefox on Ubuntu, 1.8 seconds. Microsoft Edge on Windows, 4.2 seconds. LibreOffice Writer on Ubuntu, 2.1 seconds. Microsoft Word on Windows, 5.8 seconds. The File Manager, Ubuntu's Files app opens in 0.9 seconds. Windows Explorer takes 2.4 seconds. Every single one of these comparisons points in the same direction, and that consistency is important. When you see the same directional difference across multiple measurements, you're not looking at an anomaly, you're looking at an architectural consequence. Linux is faster not because of a trick or a tweak, it's faster because of what it's designed to do. It's designed to serve you. Windows is designed to serve you and a commercial ecosystem simultaneously, and you feel the weight of that second obligation every time you interact with your machine. Then there's the memory situation, which is one of those things that becomes genuinely shocking once you see the actual numbers. On a freshly booted Windows 11 system before you've opened a single application, the operating system itself is consuming approximately 3.2 gigabytes of RAM. On Ubuntu 24.04 LTS, freshly booted, same hardware, roughly 800 megabytes. That is a 2.4 gigabyte difference sitting idle, doing nothing for you. That's 2.4 gigabytes of RAM your applications can't use because Windows has already claimed it for background processes you didn't ask for and can't easily turn off. If you have 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is still a completely common amount on consumer laptops, Windows is consuming 40% of your total memory before you've done anything. Ubuntu is consuming 10%. The remaining 90% is yours to use for actual work. This is why computers running Linux feel faster even on aging hardware. It's not magic, it's the operating system getting out of your way. Now let's talk about security, because this is where the conversation usually gets uncomfortable. Most people assume Windows must be secure enough. After all, it's what corporations use, right? But when you look at the actual vulnerability data, the picture is considerably more complicated. The Linux kernel's critical vulnerability count per year has been consistently lower than the Windows kernel's critical vulnerability count per year across the entire period of systematic CVE tracking. Part of this reflects a fundamental architectural difference. The Linux kernel is open source. When a vulnerability exists, the entire global security research community can find it, report it, and fix it. Microsoft's proprietary kernel means that only internal teams have access to the code, and no internal team, regardless of how talented, has the combined capacity of the distributed global security research community working in parallel. The practical consequence of this shows up in patch response times. When a vulnerability is disclosed, the Linux ecosystem delivers an available security patch in an average of 18 hours from CVE publication. The Windows equivalent averages 72 hours for vulnerabilities of comparable severity. That is a 4 times faster response, which translates directly into a 54-hour reduction in the window during which your system is vulnerable to a publicly known unpatched exploit. Those 54 hours are not abstract. They are the hours during which attackers are actively scanning for vulnerable systems and deploying exploits. A faster patch isn't just a nice metric, it's the difference between getting hit and staying clean. And then there's the malware ecosystem, which tells its own story through sheer scale. The Windows malware ecosystem is orders of magnitude larger than the Linux equivalent, not primarily because Windows has more users, though it does, but because the Windows security architecture is inherently more vulnerable to the deployment techniques that malware uses. Linux's security model makes it a significantly less attractive target from a return on investment T perspective for malware developers. The effort required to compromise a Linux system produces a much lower success rate than the equivalent effort against Windows, so the malware economy has overwhelmingly focused its resources on Windows. The result is a threat landscape that is structurally different between the two platforms in Linux's favor. And this advantage holds even as Linux's market share grows, because the underlying security architecture that makes Linux resistant to these techniques is architectural, not merely statistical. Privacy is where things get personal, and I want to be careful here to stick to what the actual network traffic analysis documents, rather than speculation. When you monitor the background network traffic of a default Windows 11 installation, meaning you haven't changed any settings, you've just set it up the way Microsoft wants you to, you see consistent, regular connections to telemetry infrastructure, Copilot integration services, advertising delivery endpoints, and update preparation systems. These connections happen continuously in the background, regardless of what you're doing, transmitting data about your system and your usage patterns to Microsoft servers. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's documented network traffic that anyone with the right monitoring tools can observe on their own machine. The default Ubuntu installation's background network activity looks almost nothing like this. The primary background connections are the package manager periodically checking for updates and the distribution's security advisory service. That's it. The fundamental difference here isn't incidental. It reflects the core philosophical difference between the two platforms. Windows is, among other things, a data collection platform. Linux is, fundamentally, a computing platform. One of these is designed around what it can learn about you. The other is designed around what it can do for you. And once you've seen the network traffic comparison with your own eyes, it becomes very difficult to unsee. Here's where things get particularly interesting if you write code for a living, because the productivity numbers in software development contexts are not marginal. They are dramatic. Across build time comparisons, measured on equivalent hardware for Go, Rust, TypeScript, and Python projects, Linux averages a 2.59 times build time advantage over Windows, meaning that on Linux, your code builds in less than half the time it takes on Windows. If you're running builds dozens of times per day, which any active developer is, this compounds into hours of recovered time per week. That's not time you're spending differently. That's time that was simply being lost. Docker container performance shows an even starker gap. Container startup time on Linux is 4.1 times faster than on Windows with Docker Desktop, and file synchronization latency shows a 62,866 microsecond advantage for Linux. The reason for this is architectural. Docker on Linux runs natively because Linux's kernel includes the containerization primitives that Docker uses. Docker on Windows runs through a virtualization layer. It's emulating a Linux environment because the underlying containerization technology is fundamentally Linux technology. Every time Windows runs a Docker container, it's doing extra work to pretend to be Linux. Linux just runs the container. But possibly the most eye-opening productivity finding isn't the build times or the container performance. It's the environment maintenance comparison. Over a 30-day period on Windows, the average developer spends 11 hours and 40 minutes on environment maintenance, dealing with broken dependencies, Windows update disruptions, driver conflicts, tool compatibility issues, and the general fragility that characterizes the Windows development environment. On Linux, over the same 30-day period, the equivalent maintenance time is 40 minutes. The aggregate effect of these differences, faster builds, better container performance, dramatically less environment maintenance, is approximately 2 times developer output from equivalent hours invested. If you're a developer spending 8 hours a day working, Linux is effectively giving you an extra 4 hours of productive work. On Windows, you're working 8 hours, but only getting 4 hours worth of actual output from the fraction of that time not spent waiting or fixing things. Now, I want to show you something that I think is the most compelling evidence in this entire comparison, because it requires no advocacy, no argument, and no trust in my analysis. It is simply the documented behavior of the people who build and operate the technology that runs the internet and the global computing infrastructure. These are engineers and architects whose professional reputations and organizational budgets depend on making the right platform choice. They are not making ideological decisions. They are making engineering decisions. The platform they have chosen, overwhelmingly and consistently, is Linux. Approximately 96% of the world's top 1 million web servers run Linux. Approximately 90% of the cloud computing infrastructure across Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Platform, and Microsoft Azure, including Microsoft's own cloud, runs on Linux. And as of the top 500 lists, November 2025 edition, all 500 of the world's fastest supercomputers run Linux, every single one. Read that last one again slowly. The world's most computationally demanding workloads, operated by the organizations with the largest engineering budgets and the least tolerance for suboptimal platform choices, have converged on Linux with a unanimity that is, as of the latest data, literally 100%. If Linux were the inferior platform that the mainstream consumer narrative implies, this would not be the case. The people building and operating these systems are not making inferior choices. They are making the best engineering choice available, evaluated against the most demanding requirements imaginable, and the answer they keep arriving at is Linux. The server infrastructure evidence is, in a very real sense, the market's honest verdict, free from advertising, free from distribution deals, and free from the installed base inertia that keeps consumer platforms dominant long after superior alternatives exist. The financial picture tells a similar story, though the specific numbers vary enough by organization size and deployment type that I want to focus on the structural factors rather than single-point estimates. Linux licensing costs nothing. That is not a small thing when you multiply it across an enterprise deployment with hundreds or thousands of devices. Windows licensing is a per-device commercial cost that compounds directly with scale, but the licensing cost difference, while real, is actually not the largest financial factor in the total cost of ownership comparison. The larger factor is hardware refresh cost. Windows 11 has hardware requirements that exclude an enormous installed base of functional, capable computers, specifically machines with processors predating Intel's 8th generation, among other requirements. For enterprises running hardware in that excluded range, migrating to Windows 11 means replacing hardware that still works perfectly well, simply because Microsoft's current operating system won't run on it. Ubuntu 24.04 LTS runs on essentially all of that hardware. An organization that chooses Linux can extend the useful life of its existing hardware by years, potentially by a decade or more, deferring capital expenditure that Windows would force them to make regardless of whether the hardware is actually wearing out. The total cost of ownership, advantage that results from combining zero licensing cost with multi-year hardware life extension is, for many organizations, the most financially significant advantage in the comparison, and it compounds over time rather than diminishing. System stability might be the operational advantage that matters most to the people responsible for keeping infrastructure running. Production Linux servers. Running multi-year uninterrupted uptime periods are not remarkable in the Linux world. They are the expected baseline. The infrastructure that makes this possible includes live kernel patching, the ability to apply even kernel-level security updates without restarting the system, and an update architecture that separates kernel updates, which require a restart, from all other updates which do not. The result is a system that can be maintained continuously, patched continuously, and kept current on security without the planned downtime that Windows update cycles require. Windows, by architectural design, requires system restarts for security patch installation on a monthly cycle. Microsoft's patch Tuesday cadence imposes a regular restart requirement on every maintained Windows system. For a server running a continuous workload, this means either planned downtime windows every month or the risk of running unpatched systems between maintenance cycles. Neither option is acceptable for truly critical infrastructure, which is why truly critical infrastructure almost universally runs Linux. The stability advantage isn't just a convenience. It's what makes the difference between infrastructure that can be reliably maintained and infrastructure that requires the operational compromise between security and availability that Windows restart-dependent update model forces. The final dimension of this comparison is the one that goes beyond performance measurements and market statistics into something that is harder to quantify but might be the most important of all. It's the question of what kind of relationship you have with your computer. On Windows, your computer runs software you cannot examine, modified by a vendor you cannot audit, in ways that the vendor determines unilaterally and can change through any update. The commercial nature of the platform means that the vendor's interests and your interests are not always aligned, and when they diverge, the vendor's interests generally prevail. Expressed through background telemetry you can't fully disable, Copilot integration you didn't ask for and can't completely remove, and advertising infrastructure embedded into the operating system itself. On Linux, the operating system is open source. Every line of code that runs on your computer is available for examination by anyone with the technical interest to look at it. Independent researchers have verified that it does what the documentation describes. And if you have the capability and the need to modify how it behaves, you can do that and share those modifications with others who can build on them further. The Linux software freedom is not an abstract philosophical point. It's an architectural property with practical consequences. The platform cannot secretly do things the documentation doesn't describe because the code is visible. The platform cannot prioritize commercial interests over user interests because no commercial interest owns it. The platform belongs, in a very real sense, to everyone who uses it and gets better through the contributions of everyone who improves it. When you put all 8 of these dimensions together, performance, security, privacy, developer productivity, server infrastructure, total cost of ownership, system stability, and software freedom, you're not looking at a platform that is marginally better in some areas and worse in others. You're looking at a platform that is substantially better across every single measured domain. The performance advantage isn't close. 4.3 times faster boot, consistent application launch advantages across every tested application. The security advantage isn't marginal. 4 times faster, patch response, lower critical vulnerability rates, a structurally less attractive malware target. The privacy architecture isn't comparable. One platform transmits a fraction of the background data the other sends by default. The developer productivity isn't a minor improvement, double the output from equivalent hours based on build times, container performance, and environment maintenance comparisons that are individually compelling and collectively decisive. The server deployment isn't a trend. It's a consensus approaching unanimity among the engineers who make platform choices free from the consumer market's inertia. The financial advantage compounds over time rather than appearing once and disappearing. The stability enables uptime that the Windows Update model structurally prevents, and the software freedom creates a relationship with your technology that the proprietary model cannot replicate by design. Here's the thing that I think deserves the most honest acknowledgement at the end of all of this. The reason most people don't know any of what I've just shown you isn't a conspiracy. It isn't deliberate suppression. It is something considerably more mundane and considerably harder to disrupt. The evidence has been published in the channels whose audience is the technically engaged community. Security researchers publish CVE analysis in security research publications. Developer productivity findings appear in developer-focused communities. Server market statistics live in infrastructure industry reports. None of this is secret in the sense that it's been hidden. It's been technically public and practically invisible to the general computing population because the distribution channel was the technical channel, not the mainstream technology conversation. The mainstream technology conversation has been structured around the Windows commercial dominance for so long that the framing of the conversation itself encodes the assumption of Windows superiority. Linux is presented as the alternative, the thing you choose if you're willing to accept trade-offs, that the mainstream is rational to avoid. But when you replace that framing with the actual evidence, the conclusion reverses. The trade-offs run in the other direction. Choosing Windows means accepting a slower, more vulnerable, less private, more expensive, less stable, and less free platform in exchange for the familiarity that comes from decades of commercial dominance and the compatibility that comes from being the platform that software vendors target first. That familiarity is real, and that compatibility matters for specific use cases. I'm not going to tell you that Linux is perfect or that the transition is effortless for every user in every situation. There are applications that run only on Windows. There are workflows that assume Windows. And there are users for whom the switching cost is genuinely prohibitive given their specific circumstances. But the honest framing of the choice is not superior mainstream versus tolerable alternative. It is commercially dominant platform with significant technical disadvantages versus technically superior platform with significant familiarity and compatibility trade-offs. That is a different choice, with a different calculation. And knowing the real terms of the choice is what makes it possible to make it honestly. The measurements are specific. The evidence is documented. The server deployment statistics are public. The CVE data is tracked. The network traffic analysis is reproducible. The build time comparisons are replicable. None of what I've shown you today requires trusting my word. All of it can be verified independently by anyone with the technical tools and the interest to reproduce the measurements. That reproducibility is what separates this from advocacy. Advocacy asks you to trust the advocate. Evidence asks you to examine the measurements. The measurements, examined honestly, produce the conclusion that the better platform is available, has been available, and gets measurably better with each kernel release and each distribution update, while the dominant platform's update cycle continues delivering commercial infrastructure alongside the security patches, adding weight to a system already carrying more than it needs to. You pressed the power button this morning. You waited. You may not have thought much about it, but now you know what you were waiting for, and you know that you don't have to wait that long. The better platform is there. The proof is in the measurements. And what you do with that information is entirely up to you.